Give us 1 sec while we get set up here. Wherever you're comfortable.
I'll stand right here, my guy. The man of the hour.
Thanks for bearing with us. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Attorney General Josh Shapiro, and really pleased to be back here in Susquehanna County today with some folks who have now become good friends in this process for really important and historic announcements. I want to acknowledge Chief Deputy Attorney General Becca Franz, who is to my right, who's done extraordinary work on this case and many of our environmental crimes cases. She truly is one of the most gifted prosecutors in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I'm really grateful to be your colleague, Becca. I also want to thank Section Director Justice Bramley, who is with us, who's done great work on this case and many others working together with Becca and our team. You're here today because fundamentally Pennsylvanians have a right to clean air and to pure water. That right is enshrined in our state constitution in Article 1, Section 27. And for too long, the good people of Dimock have waited to have the clean water that our Constitution promises restored to them in their homes and throughout our community. More than a decade of waiting for a permanent plan for clean drinking water is far too long. That's not only a failure of the company that contaminated our water, but also a failure by some in the Commonwealth to protect its people and to make sure that the rights of the citizens, the rights enshrined in our Constitution, are upheld. The residents of Dimock serve as a stark reminder that when big corporations are not held accountable, then the people suffer. And our small towns across this Commonwealth and across this nation get hurt. And while it took a while for accountability, today it arrived in a courtroom right here in Susquehanna County. And now we are in a position to deliver real results for the people of Dimock. Today, in a courtroom here in this courthouse, Coterra, the corporate successor to Cabot Oil and Gas, took responsibility for the crimes Cabot committed that polluted the water for the residents of Dimock. After more than a decade of denials, of shirking responsibility and accountability, Coterra pleaded to their crime, and the people of Dimock finally had their day in court. Today is further proof you don't get to just walk away from the harm you do here in Pennsylvania. And it's further proof that the Office of Attorney General will hold you accountable. My office will not allow anyone to come in to cause harm and then abandon people like Victoria, who you will hear from momentarily, or her neighbors, many of whom have joined us here today, there will be consequences for your conduct against them. When we filed criminal charges against Cabot Oil and Gas in 2020, we knew that people were pleased to see some accountability on the way. But I also understand that there were folks who were frustrated that on that day there weren't CEOs who were being led away in handcuffs, or when water wasn't being restored at that very moment. I get it, I really do. But I also understand that this isn't how criminal charges against companies work under the laws here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Because here in Pennsylvania, breaking criminal environmental laws sadly only yields small dollar fines compared to the damage that is caused and the havoc that is wreaked. Addressing this legal imbalance is a challenge for another day in another office, but it's critically important to take note of that at this time. So we faced a choice here in this case to go to trial and to win, which we would have under the leadership of Becca Franz, but where the maximum penalty Coterra would have been forced to pay under Pennsylvania state law would have been just roughly $600,000, pocket change, to companies whose profits can be in the tens of millions of dollars year after year. The alternative was we could work toward a more permanent solution that brings criminal accountability but also fixes the problem. And with that in mind, my office went to multiple independent experts with one simple directive: sketch a plan to get clean, reliable water back to the people who were affected, back to this community in Dimock that had been harmed because of this corporate wrongdoing. The experts explored the options to provide water to Dimock, engaging in more comprehensive engineering than had ever been done in that area. And in the end, these independent experts provided a real engineering plan to get clean water to Dimock residents as quickly as possible. And that brings us to where we stand here today. As Coterra pleaded to prohibition against discharge of industrial waste, which is a criminal violation of our state Clean Streams law, they also committed to paying $16.29 million. That is to fully fund the construction of a regulated public water line to be constructed and operated by Pennsylvania American Water. Pennsylvania American Water Company serves 2.4 million people here in the Commonwealth every day, nearly 19% of our population, including systems in this area. We're joined by their president today and many of their executives who worked very diligently with the Office of Attorney General, and I want to thank in particular Tom Chiamento for his important work helping us get to this day. Pennsylvania American Water has the expertise to effectively manage the construction and operation of this new public water supply system. Now listen, I know that there has been community discussion of multiple potential plans to source public water, but this is the best, safest plan that independent experts have told us and the affected homeowners will get clean water to residents as quickly and safely as possible. Under the terms of their settlement, Coterra will pay for the water line to be constructed. In addition, they will pay for two other things. First, they will pay the additional expense to these residents to ensure they do not have to pay a water bill for the next 75 years. 75 years. Second, they will provide treatment systems to treat the homeowner's water supply, as well as bottled water delivery to the impacted individuals' homes until the water line is constructed and ready to be connected to the homes here. So they'll pay for the pipeline, they'll pay for 75 years of their water costs, and they'll pay for these temporary means to make sure they have clean water. Pennsylvania American Water believes construction of the public water line will take approximately 3 years. This plea is nothing short of historic. It's historic because this resolves a problem that has lasted for more than a decade, that these good people deserved a long time ago, but they are now getting today. It's historic because of the amount of money that is being dedicated to fix an environmental crime. I remind you, an environmental crime where the penalty would have been $600,000 had they been convicted in a court of law. Far too often, things get kicked down the road or just ignored, hoping the voices calling for help and change will just fade away. We've seen that play out so many times here in the Commonwealth. Well, that doesn't sit well with me, and it doesn't sit well with Becca Franz or anyone in the Office of Attorney General. So we're here to say that that is absolutely not going to happen on our watch. We are resolving these issues right here today, finally. You have seen us in the AG's office hold the powerful accountable time and time again. We go after those who break the law and put profits before people. And today, we are again delivering on that mission, that promise to the people that we will get this done for you. People across the country remember what happened right here in Dimock, and now they will also know that the rule of law won the day, and people were put before the powerful. It is important to note that justice was finally attained, albeit years later, and the companies will now be forced to take note again that we will not allow communities like this to be taken advantage of or ever forgotten. Your constitutional rights matter here in Pennsylvania, especially your Article 1, Section 27, constitutional right to clean air and pure water. It matters here in Pennsylvania. And now it is my pleasure, before I take your questions, to introduce Victoria Schweitzer, a retired school teacher and resident of Dimock, whose water was polluted by these crimes and whose voice was heard throughout this process and who helped enable us to reach this important day today. Victoria,
Thank you.
the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I wasn't going to use notes, but I see that the Attorney General did, so.
You do whatever you want.
It's not exactly a third grade class that I'm standing in front of. They were pretty easy, but the seventh graders,
Much harder.
Yeah, much harder.
I've got 4 kids, I know.
The day is passing. I start with good afternoon, but now it's good evening, and I'm really grateful to be here, to have the opportunity to speak as a resident of Dimock. I'm one of the recipients of the water line, and that's wonderful news. I have to thank Rebecca, Chief Deputy Rebecca Franz, for her diligent work, and it just went on and on. Whereas Tony's not here, the investigative officer that we got to know, Anthony Martinelli, he was wonderful at his job. But my deepest respect and gratitude goes to the Attorney General, Governor-elect Josh Shapiro, for making this day happen. You know, 12 years ago, these same folks, were promised a water line by DEP and the Commonwealth. I have to do this, so bear with me. Only to have it squashed. And for the next 12 years, these people had to find very creative ways to get water for their homes, water for their families, their kids, their critters, and it was not pretty. You know, people with disabilities had to drive and haul water. People took it from the creek. It was just crazy, you know, people trying to find water. And one of these families, you know, watched his kids, as he said earlier, go from kindergarten to college without water, safe water, anxiety-free water flowing from their faucets. That's crazy. When we received the call from Rebecca and Tony to meet with the AG officials, the recent meeting, and a PWAC representative, we thought this might be it. You know, the Pennsylvania water guy was going to be there. So we got excited. And Attorney Franz conducted a very straightforward, serious meeting. She didn't sugarcoat it. You know, this wasn't going to be a quick fix. It wasn't going to happen overnight. You know, she mentioned 3, I think maybe 4 years was mentioned,
Yeah.
you know. But I couldn't help it.
I said 3.
Okay, thank you. We'll go with you. He's persistent. All right, but you know, I'm doing the math there. I'm sitting at the table. They had put the tables in a square so everybody could see each other. And, you know, I added the 4 to the 12 that's already passed, and some people, even before that, had bad water. So we're coming up with like 16 or 17 years. So I'm registering the math, and I looked at the people, my neighbors, you know, how their faces, and you know, this is 12 years later. We are old, older, you know, and tired. I mean, we are older, you know. But then I noticed I couldn't help but see the empty chairs around the table. Now that wasn't on purpose, but some people chose to sit in the back row. And so there were empty chairs at the table. And those were the ones that got me, because there are people that are not here, people that have passed in this time. And a shout out to Ken Ely and Bill Ely and Ron Carter and Norma Florentino. They're gone. They've died. And then a shout out to our neighbors who have moved. Some of them were really good friends. The Seymours, the Johnsons, the Costellos, the Sautners, the Lewises, the Farnellis, Mike Ely, and I'm probably missing some. The Attorney General's office, this Attorney General, was willing to take this case on and see it through. It was the people's lawyer that got it done. And I have to say this, our own elected officials, DEP, EPA, failed us miserably. Our senator, he's called me a liar at least twice. Our representative, she knows the story, but she told me, I advise you, if you can't get on board with the industry, to move. So that's our elected officials. The only elected official that has helped us, and I have to say this, is a senator from District 44. She's not my senator, but she's Pennsylvania's senator, and she's working for the people in the harmed field, the shale fields. She's working for them, all Pennsylvania, who've been impacted or harmed. And it's my hope that, that the new administration will reach out to her and others like her that will fight for the quality of life, health, and safety of the residents who are in the shale field and who are unwilling to sacrifice citizens' lives for corporations or industry. You know, we can't flip a switch. You know, we can't divest from fossil fuels overnight. I drive a Jeep. A lot of my neighbors drive trucks and cars, and they all run on gas. We don't have any cute little electric vehicles running around Dimock. Not yet. I think we have one ordered, but I don't know where it is. We heat our home with propane. We cook with gas, but it should not be in people's water. Going forward, we hope that the actions of the Attorney General and his dedicated officers encourage people who are living in the shale fields, who live next to a drilling rig or by a well pad or an impoundment pond or a toxic waste treatment storage tank or facility, or maybe you have a pipeline running under your kitchen window, that if your water's been harmed or you think it's been harmed, do something about it. Don't be afraid. File a complaint with the AG's office. You know, when we first talked a long time ago, I quoted John Lewis because I just love him, and I'm going to say this again. When you see something that is not right, fair, not just, you have to speak up. Say something, do something, get in good trouble, necessary trouble. Representative John Lewis, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I think that concludes American Water here, who can answer any PA American Water questions. Otherwise, I'm happy to hear you out, so fire away.
What's to prevent these two new water wells that you're going to drill from going bad like so many other water wells around here have gone bad? And what happens if that happens?
Just identify yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Rickard. I'm the engineering manager with Pennsylvania American Water Company. First of all, Pennsylvania American Water is pleased to partner with the Attorney General's office to help to deliver this safe water solution to the people of Dimock. To answer your question, so when we go to an extensive survey to locate the new groundwater sources, and to your point, there is no guarantee that we will be able to find non-contaminated groundwater, or it may not become contaminated at some point in the future. So we'll rely on extensive treatment techniques to remove those contaminants. And those treatment techniques will be installed initially whether the water has contaminants or not. It'll be a 4-stage treatment system, manned and monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, backed up with emergency power. And it's really the belts and suspenders on top of belts and suspenders. Will be monitored and in full compliance with all drinking water standards at all times.
Is that 75 years they talked about that water is free guaranteed? Does that go on to heirs, successors, and to anybody who gets the land afterwards?
Yeah, it stays with the house.
For those living...
Media, any other questions from the media? Yeah.
When you're governor, will Coterra be allowed to resume drilling and operations in the 9 square mile box?
Yeah, that's obviously a question for the regulators, not for the Attorney General's office. And that's probably a question more for the Wolf administration now. Certainly, it's an issue that we will review upon taking office with my new DP secretary. I want to make sure we get anybody from the media. Yeah.
Josh, what do you think took 14 years for this to kind of have some type of resolution?
You know, I think it's a really good question that I'm not sure we have all the answers to yet. There were failures at every level. I mean, you heard Victoria talk a bit about this before. There are local elected officials where someone would normally just kind of naturally go, ignore them. The regulators, whose job it is to set the boundaries for industry to operate in, failed. We ultimately came along and got this done. But I think it's also fair to say that law enforcement, and this is not just unique to the Attorney General's office, it's true of the DA's office or the FBI or others, typically law enforcement comes in after a crime has been committed, right? After the wrong has occurred. And so by definition, you're coming in at the tail end of something. We need to change our regulatory structure here in the Commonwealth Back to the gentlelady's question before about the regulatory oversight, in this new hat that I'll be wearing in a few weeks, I intend to make sure we have robust enforcement of our regulations, environmental, worker rights, and others. We have to make sure that we are setting clear rules of the road and holding industry accountable. If the regulators fail to do that, then industry is not going to be constrained, and they're going to go ahead and put profits before people, and that's where the danger comes in. So I guess that's a long-winded answer to your question. I apologize, but it really does speak to the fact that there were failures at every level. Failures that hopefully we can correct in the future by more aggressive regulatory approach. You've obviously seen the work I've done as Attorney General. We don't shy away from big fights. We hold the powerful accountable. I just think that has to be done earlier in the stage at a regulatory state before it gets to law enforcement's responsibility.
Josh,
Jack,
does that
I'll
mean
leave it
that
to you? Yeah.
Right here.
Oh, yes. My understanding is that there have been additional instances of methane migration and other citations, hundreds, I think, of other citations that Coterra has received from the DEP in the last 14 years. Any plans for justice on those?
Again, that's more of a DEP question, and so I'm going to defer you at least now. I realize I wear somewhat two hats, or at least one and a half now, but that really is still a question for the Wolf administration to answer. If you're not satisfied with the answer there, hit me up again in a few weeks. I'd be happy, after I've had a chance to review it, to give you an answer.
I'll take the last question right here.
just personally for you, how do you feel that something that has taken so long here, how do you feel that it's finally over with?
Well, look, I'm going to be all over Pennsylvania American Water to make sure this line gets built, and then it'll be over with. And when I say all over, it'll be mostly friendly. Don't worry, we'll get it done. I think at that moment where I get to see Victoria and others, turn on their tap and not be afraid to take a glass out and take a drink or bathe their kids or grandkids, that's when it'll be really over. This is obviously a critically important step. And the way I feel right now is incredibly proud of our team led by Becca. I feel grateful to the good people of Dimock for trusting us to help get us to this point where we could have resolution. They've been lied to and ignored and frustrated for more than a decade. And they didn't have to trust us. They didn't have to give us a shot to try and fix this, but they did, and I'm grateful for that and humbled by that. And so I feel good about what we were all able to collectively do. I know that there's still some work to do until they can put the glass under the tap and drink without worry, and that'll be the day where I think I feel totally satisfied and totally pleased, and maybe on that day I can come up and we can all have a drink together.
I was going to say, come on up, man.
So there you go.
Check it out.
You first.
What PA American Water tells me. Thanks, Jack. Good.
I think we're good.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
I get to add one thing. I'm sorry, that senator that is working hard for us, I was so nervous, I don't know if I said her name. Senator Katie Moose, District 44.
Thank you.
They asked me to be an expert witness because I have intimate knowledge of how the oil and gas industry screws up. And I thought it would be easy. Everybody in the industry knows that wells leak. You heard it in court today. Our wells leak methane. That's what Cabot said. And yet when we told the public that, and we told previous governors that, and we told the PA-DEP that, and we went to court in 2017 with two of these families, and Cabot hired experts that say their wells didn't leak. And they won. They were found innocent 5 years ago of the same crime they were found guilty of today. No justice today. Nothing can restore what's done to these people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming out, and we're going to continue this work. We're going to continue this fight. This is only the beginning. We're going to make sure that that water pipeline to deliver clean water is put into place. We're going to make sure that the residents receive the clean water during that construction period, and we're going to make sure that this message spreads across the country and around the world, that when oil and gas companies pollute and poison the water and the residents of communities, they're going to have to not only pay, but they're going to have their day in court too and say those words that they're guilty.
And guys, 190 years my family's been on the corner in Silver Lake Township. Craig Stevens. Guess what? All I did was stand up for my neighbors down in Dimock. They vilified us, dragged us through the mud. They subpoenaed me, got all my bank records. I had nothing to do with anything except for standing for the citizens in Susquehanna County. What's embarrassing is it took the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to drag this into this courtroom, because we've begged for them to do something about it in Susquehanna County. The county commissioners should be embarrassed. They've never helped us one bit. Nobody, not one elected official that represents us, local, county, state, or federal, has ever been there to visit and see their own constituents. Lisa Baker, Senator Baker, and Jonathan Fritz will now take over Dimock from the useless Gene Yaw, who ran the ERE, Environmental Resource and Energy Committee. He's done nothing but badmouth us, call us liars, Putin's puppets. We're not. I'm a proud sixth-generation landowner in this area, and I will stand with my neighbors, and you would be shocked at how many new people have been contaminated just like this in the last 14 years, and we should stand up with them too and stop vilifying people and dragging their good names and family names through the mud. So I tell them, do your job here and prosecute people. Thank you.
Yes.